Warhammer 40k is a pretty cool universe, being an outrageously grimdark sci-fi fantasy. There's loads of games, books, miniatures, and all that other fun media for you to get for it. It's my favorite fantasy universe to think about, but sometimes it can suck, or just not hold up to the quality of standard that it usually does. So in this video, I'm going to be covering some of the factions in Warhammer 40k but have you noticed that sometimes 40k isn't all there? Like sometimes it isn't firing on all cylinders, and I'm just not talking about like a section of a book not exactly being as good as the rest, or a game that was not as good as you thought it would be. No, I'm talking about like entire factions worth of lore, or just something about it is utterly forgettable or leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So let's go over my list of grievances, or otherwise unremarkable factions in Warhammer 40k that I feel are lacking, aren't really up to snuff. And if you like the factions I talk about, it's not an attack on you. It's what I feel. You can go ahead and tell me how dumb my opinions are in the comments down below because of that. Also, you should totally like and subscribe so you can see more videos like this. All the cool kids are doing it. First, I want to have an honorable mention though, one that most people will usually agree on in the community, because this is a faction I know everybody has an opinion on, just because the memes about it are so prevalent throughout the community. And that's got to be the big mean blueberries themselves, the Ultramarines. The Ultramarines suffer from the issue of just being the big blue Boy Scouts, because they show up in everything and do everything. They are the baseline Space Marine that can do everything and don't really have that much of a crazy culture or wacky tactics that they pull out during fights. Because they're the jacks of all trades that do everything, they're written to be the protagonists of stories usually. These practical demigods are kind of boring. For the most part, they just follow the Codex Astartes because it's a book Robute Guilliman made. And they really only started getting some more fun 40k stuff once Robute Guilliman came back, because now they had a leader that realized how much not only he, but the Emperor of Mankind messed up, having to deal with the ramifications of things like the Horus Heresy. I mean, really, you'd ask an Ultramarine player what makes the Ultramarines so cool. It's just that they do everything well, which is a similar issue with their chaotic brethren, the Black Legion, which primarily just act like the Ultramarines, but evil. Well, eviler. Everyone's evil in this universe. Where these are the chapters that are mostly used in stories, because it's really easy to just interject the Black Legion or the Ultramarines, because overall they'll just act like do-it-all Space Marines that can specialize in every weapon and know a little bit of everything. With them being really saturated in the entirety of all the lore, making it so some particular people have a disdain for them. In the actual list, for Warhammer 40k at least, we have the Imperial Fists. The Imperial Fists have nothing cool going on. Like, very little actual cool stuff happens. Sure, they're supposed to be this bulwark that help protect humanity, but they aren't that cool, and they mostly just have the magic pain gloves. Like, they're yellow and they use bolters. Oh my goodness. How cool. Sure, you could have cool stuff with them where they're fighting during a siege against Xenos or Chaos forces, but the coolest parts of the Imperial Fists come from 30k, and then they're given to successor chapters in 40k. All the really noticeable Space Marines that were in the Horus Heresy and the Imperial Fist either got taken by the Grey Knights or the Black Templars, with the Black Templars actually embodying Rogel Dorn as a person a little bit better than I think the Imperial Fist did, being long-standing embodiments of his rage and the disgust of the Codex Astartes he had. And they just don't do anything with them. If somebody has some cool lore or a story about the Imperial Fists, make sure to tell me. I'd love to be proven wrong on this one, because I thought the Space Marines that are holding giant shields would be a little cooler. I don't like the Drukhari. I'm gonna keep it real, I just don't. They're dark elves. They're fantasy dark elves, basically. But Slaanesh corrupted, so they're like real spooky. Sure, the Drukhari have places like Cameron, the Webway, and they have some fun bitter hatred with Jagatai Khan, but I don't really find their stories all that interesting. And of course, this is my own opinion coming out. I'm not a big fan of Slaanesh. Of course, Slaanesh and their stories really help in 40k to show the corruption that people will go through just to live a happy life in this horrible universe. But the fleets of degenerate space elves aren't really the thing that I went to 40k for. I think they're fun enemies and fun foes to face, but I'm not very interested in who they are, as much as I am for other factions. The Genestealer Cults are also up there for me. The Genestealer Cults feel more like flavor text for Tyranids than anything, so it's a little crazy that they have their own faction. That is basically just an annoying version of both Tyranids and Guardsmen put together. There are some cool ideas though, like the idea of these aliens infiltrating a planet years before they actually come and get it, and causing a part of the population to become these mutated freaks when the time comes. It's just that they're okay, and Tyranids are way cooler. I couldn't really see a reason to collect Genestealers, because if you really wanted to, you could just get Guards or Tyranid instead, making them a faction that really doesn't need to exist. Them instead being a bunch of miniatures that could be added to Tyranid lists. And there's some silly memes that come out of them, like where they say they worship the Emperor, but he's purple and has 4 arms. All in the Tau. Let's talk about the Tau. I think they're the most despised faction in all of the 40k community, mainly because their lore doesn't feel right. It doesn't really fit with 40k. It's a little too hopeful for a galaxy full of chaos gods that want to eat and destroy all the souls in the galaxy and govern where all souls will eventually end up. There's a bunch of aliens that want to eradicate humanity, and there's a bunch of humans that want to eradicate all aliens. It's endless, ceaseless, horrible war out there. So why do we follow a bunch of blue aliens that believe in a greater good and try to recruit people, with there only being slight tinges of evilness in them, where everybody else in this universe is overwhelmingly evil? They seem a little antithetical to 40k, and they're kind of boring if it weren't for their crisis battle suits and railguns. There's only really one good grouping of Tau, and that's the Farside Enclave, mainly because they're guys in mechs that use giant mech swords to deal with stuff, and their leader, Commander Farsight, almost got corrupted by Khorne, and the rest of the Tau don't have as cool stories as that. Plus their tabletop is hated. Nobody likes fighting against a firing line army like them. And lastly, the Leagues of Votan. The Leagues of Votan are at the bottom and the worst because they don't have anything. Each faction that we've talked about has 20 years of continuous lore. Well, the Leagues of Votan are relatively new and taken from older editions of Warhammer 40k. Where Space Dwarves did exist, they were just all killed and eaten by Tyranids. I think this new rewritten lore is okay with them using machines to gain all their technology. It fits snugly inside of the theme of Warhammer 40k, but there's not a lot of it, and that's the issue. Everything else is so expansive compared to what the Votan are, making them the worst by default. And also, they don't have a lot of miniatures. So you can't even really play them on tabletop, but these are my picks for my least favorite Warhammer 40k factions. If you disagree with me and want to tell me a little bit more about why you like these factions and what makes them good for you, then I'd love to hear it in the comments down below. Besides that, this was a more freeform video where I just had a checklist, and I could ramble a little bit about my own taste. So thank you for watching. If you watched this far, make sure to leave a like, comment, all that good stuff. Till next video, fellas!